Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kim Schmidt, Executive Editor of Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar in conjunction with Iron Comps by TractorZoom. Today's presenter is Kyle McMahon, founder and CEO of Iron Comps by TractorZoom. He's going to be walking us through some of the used equipment trends they've seen over the past summer, including combine availability, row crop tractor values, dealer auction performance, and more. Before he gets started, though, just a couple quick housekeeping items. On your screen, there's a control panel with a Q&A icon. You can submit questions here at any time during the presentation. And then time permitting, we'll try to answer as many of those questions as possible. And also just a reminder, we're recording today's webinar in the event you want to go back and watch it or have anyone else on your team watch as well. All right, we are ready to get started. Thanks again for joining us, and you can take it away, Kyle.
Thanks, Kim, and special thanks to the entire Farm Equipment team. And like Kim mentioned, my name is Kyle McMahon, the founder of TractorZoom and Iron Comps. And we're just off the heels of two big conferences of industries that we serve. Number one is the equipment dealer space. We were just down in Nashville for the Moving Iron Summit and have been able to network a lot of dealers across the country, as well as the Risk 360, a farm credit conference out in California, where it gets together about 450 or 500 of farm credit appraisers, specifically in real estate and equipment. So we've been able to see a good taste of what's going on in the market by talking to people and then leveraging all of the data we have in-house as well. So four of the primary things we're going to be talking about today is, number one, digital transformation. What does that mean inside of agriculture and how has COVID affected it? Number two is auction trends. What are we seeing? Nationally, we all know equipment prices are up, but how much and what does that mean geographically? As well as, okay, we're at elevated valuations today. What are we expecting to see in December, Q4, the largest buying season for farm equipment historically? And then a few other unique things that we're doing as a company that we want to take time to share. If anybody happened to be down at the Moving Iron Summit, I will admit we stole a few slides that we presented on down there, but I would strongly encourage you to stick around, because the back half of this is all brand new data that our data team and research team has been able to put together just over the last few weeks, or excuse me, the last week. And a lot of that was spurred by listening to the dealers down at Moving Iron. So as we kick it off, the first thing I want to go through is just quickly, who are we? I'm sure there's people on here on this webinar who have never heard of TractorZoom or Iron Comps before. Just to clarify, TractorZoom.com is a platform for auction companies, and as of last week now, equipment dealers to advertise their equipment to our audience of farmers across the nation, across the world. We leverage a lot of that price transparency and sold price data on TractorZoom inside of our Iron Comps software tool that gives people instant real-time valuations on farm equipment. And one other thing I wanted to touch on before we really get started into equipment valuations and what the market's doing is, how is the product doing in the market and why is it growing in popularity? The number one thing we hear from our customers is this real-time auction information inside of Iron Comps, which allows a used equipment manager or an appraiser to farm credit speed to decision. It's price transparency. And then lastly, we build software for you all, not for us selfishly. So we're very big on listening and being intentional on that to understand where we can continue to evolve naturally as the markets change. So digital transformation, we're going to dive into what we're seeing in digital transformation as it relates to agriculture. McKinsey & Company, one of the world's largest consulting companies in the world, has been tracking digital interactions with farmers, particularly on seed, fertilizer, and chemical, and the entire buying, the buying funnel and how people want to buy. So as you can see on the left-hand side, a high percentage of farmers in 2020 especially over 2018, were willing to research and evaluate online. However, once you get all the way down to the buy stage, you can see where 2020 completely goes below the 2018 numbers. And the conclusion of this was the digital interactions and digital platforms in the marketplace today for farmers, in particular seed, fertilizer, and chem, fell short on delivering the solution at the end. Effectively, that meant the digital interactions were losing trust. But once the farmer actually learned how that they can rebuy through those platforms, they gain more confidence. Selfishly, the one key nugget in here that we're a little disappointed that we didn't see is, what did that mean in relationship to farm equipment in particular? So we teamed up with Successful Farming, a large audience of farmers across the nation, and we asked farmers similar questions, getting down to the nuts and bolts of really what farmers want to do on equipment is much greater than it is in seed, fert, and chem. Almost to the tune of 2 and 3x. More farmers are willing to, 91% of farmers are willing to evaluate, research, and start to negotiate online with farm equipment, very close to what happens in the auto industry, actually. So this is about what we thought. And if we sit back and look at, okay, that's much larger than seed, fert, and chem and equipment, why? We sat back and looked at the auction industry and watched throughout COVID, auctions get shut down. How many more people are willing to buy sight unseen at an auction? There's some big auction companies out there today who are 100% online. So it's starting to be the norm. One of the key takeaways that we see here is, in your dealership, be sure to pay attention to these numbers because your customers want more digital interactions. Now we're going to break into some overall auction trends, what we're seeing in the auction market from pricing. So here is a growth chart for the average price per asset. So what is the average value of per item at an auction at each type of auction? The biggest thing you can see here is the growth between 2020 and 2021 dealer auctions. So those are dealer specific auctions, whether they're a liquidation auction from a dealership or they just have excess inventory. We have seen the confidence grow within those dealers being able to and willing to sell higher valued items at auction because they're recognizing the ability for those auction companies to achieve fairly high prices. So that's just in general. If we want to break it down into much more concise or narrow in our focus on the type of equipment, if we look at tractors between 0 and 1,500 hours that are 300 horsepower and above, we can sit back and see how quickly those values have gone up over the last year. Dealer auctions are up 31%. So the farmers that are bidding and the buyers that are bidding at those auctions are much more confident in that high quality equipment coming from a dealer's lot as compared to the growth of what we have in here is a consignment and retirement. So comparing those dealer price increases compared to the consignment and retirement increases, it's 3 times as much. So you can sit back and look at why farmers are willing to bid on that equipment. High value inventory across the board here, but dealers have something special going on. Now, if we look at that same subset, but look at 1,500 hour to 5,000 hour tractors, we sit back and say, okay, dealers have less of a premium than or premium growth on top of consignment retirements as they did, much more in parity here. And if I go back a slide quickly, the one thing I do want to point out is I think most people conceptually recognize the difference between a consignment auction, retirement auction, liquidation auction, and estate auction. A lot of times people will say, okay, well, of course the dealer is going to get more money. It's a trusted source. Retirement's probably next. Estate is probably next. And then there's liquidation and then your consignments. And this data really shows that price premium in each of those style of auctions But I think it's comforting to sit back and look at that and have confidence into that assumption. But then if you sit back and say, well, how much of a premium does retirement get on a consignment sale? You can sit back and look at that data within our entire data set. Now let's switch over into the combine market. So specifically dealer auctions. So we've charted every single combine sold at a dealer specific auction over the last few years. If we add an exponential curve to that, you can sit back and see the price premium a farmer is willing to buy in 2021 over the previous years. And this is very informative information to us as a data company and data team, because if you sit back and look at 2021, 500 SEP-hour combine in 2021 compared to 2020, even 19 and 18, farmers are willing to bid 27% more than they were last year. However, that shrinks as the piece of as that combine ages. 1,500 hours, it's dropped by 33% to 19% price premium year over year. So this is very informative to us by saying that low-hour combine coming from a dealer's lot onto an auction is gaining 27% more today than it was last year. It continues to slide the further it depreciates. So this is good general information. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from dealers over the last few months is, I want to know what's going on geographically. What are the prices doing in the Midwest, the Southeast? Not everything can be the same. Internet bidding at auctions certainly has created some parity across the nation, and being able to put a piece of equipment up on tractor trailer and haul across the country for $3,000 or $5,000 has definitely changed this. So let's look at how we've broken up the data before we dive in. These are the main 6 regions that we have sat back and identified in the data to come. So I wanted to give you a visual before we dive into some of this. Okay, so now we're breaking it down a little bit more granular. We're only looking at John Deere S670 combines. And as we sit back and look at the total volume and availability of S670 combines year over year, it has gone down 48%. So there were almost two times as many S670s sold in 2020 as there have been in 2021. And just to narrow that in, that's only through the months of January to August of 2020 versus 2021, because there's going to be a lot of combines sold here this fall. And so we want to make sure that that data matched up. And this is only narrowing in on 0 to 2,500 SEP hours. So here you can see some of the biggest changes are in the Southwest, and the Midwest has been pretty similar on the age of hours, but the price premium has gone up by $12,000, $15,000, $16,000, as you can see in the top chart in blue. As you can naturally see that price increase of the average price across these regions, but one of the biggest changes is the quality coming out of the Rockies, and the quality coming out of the Southwest continues to grow. If we look at row crop tractors, what is the volume done over the 2020 and 2021? It's also shrunk, gone down 41%. And yet these prices have continued to rise, supply and demand market. In the Midwest, it has gone up from $107,000 to $150,000. And this is late model tractors between zero and 2,000 hours. And the other big regions that have changed are the Pacific. So if you sit back and look at some of that quality of equipment coming to market in those areas, continues to rise. Interestingly, Interestingly, utility tractors have been relatively the same. So the same amount of utility tractors that have come to market in 2020 versus 2021, about the same, yet you can see a pretty linear price increase across the United States. And as we sit back and look at, well, why is the utility tractor on fire? Of all the people we talk to, our dealer network and our finance network, a lot of the people sitting at home being able to work remotely today has said, you know what, I've got this 5, 10, 15 acres that I've always wanted a tractor, so I'm going to start buying one. Supply and demand, the demand is really high. And we're starting to talk to some dealers that are curious if this is going to stay elevated. Will consumers, hobby farmers, people wanting to take care of their acreage, will this stick like it will play in the row crop tractor market? Yet that we'll find that out here coming over the next year or so. But I think it's one item that we continue to talk to dealers and understand what is going to happen in this market, because it acts differently than the row crop agriculture market. And naturally, COVID has sent a lot of people home, and they may not be working as much in their office job as what their employer might think. And lastly, as we mentioned in the very beginning of this presentation, listening to customers, this is a quick GIF on inside of our Iron Comps product that now allows people, dealers, used equipment managers, to actually narrow in on states. Historically, we've always been able to filter auction results inside of Iron Comps by radius. So I want to see all the S680s within 100 miles of me that have sold in the last 6 months that all have that are all four-wheel drive, break it down by options. One of the biggest requests we've seen is, I want to see a region. Give me all the I states, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, and let's start to look at the data that way. So all the data we just showed you, you can actually do in our product today. Okay, so we're gonna dive into some December projections. What is the equipment industry going to do in the fourth quarter of 2021? It's been a wildly volatile year, naturally continuing to go up. And I think a lot of people have wondered, will it continue to rise? Will it go flat? We don't want to catch a falling knife. And so the first slide we want to start with is probably one that you wanted to see about 10 minutes ago in the very beginning of this presentation. This is a holistic view, year-over-year trends in 2020 versus 2021. And there's two main factors: price change and change in volume. Every single category is up, like we said originally. Which of these are a supply and demand driven market? Which ones have supply, which ones don't have supply? And as we can go from left to right on these and kind of speak to a few of them. Naturally, the compact and utility markets, this is where we sat back and said there's a lot of regular consumer versus agriculture pressure. That volume's up significantly at auction. Prices are also up. Row crop, much more of a supply and demand. Supply is down. We don't think that's going to be changing, especially with OEMs not being able to produce more of the rest of these pieces of equipment as quickly as we want. Those have the highest of value increase, up nearly 27% in most row crop categories. Four-wheel drive tractors, a little bit less of a premium and less of a supply issue. Same with 300 horsepower tractors, but planters, a dramatic decrease in supply and a little bit of a bump, but not as much as you see in sprayers and combines. Interestingly, of the agriculture row crop categories here, sprayers is the only one that has more has had more sprayers come to market in 2021 than 2020. And speaking with some colleagues, one of the biggest factors we see here, even though it's the highest demand price increase, we sit back and look at, okay, farm profitability in 2021 has been really good. Now farmers are able to sit back and say, you know what, I've always wanted a sprayer, haven't had the budget. Now I want to spray timely and I want to invest in crop protection. Instead of having the co-op go across my field 3 times like it did last year, I want to apply chemical insecticides 6 times a year, have more passes, trying to shoot for a little bit higher yield. So we're seeing a much higher demand in sprayers today than we have historically. And it's that kind of nice to have piece of equipment because a co-op can do it for $6 an acre. But now we're giving the power to that farmer with cash flow, net farm income from this year to actually go acquire one. Combines at auction, inventories down significantly. This has been interesting to us because the first half of this year, and speaking with dealers, a majority of dealers said row crop tractors supply down. Then it came to combines, and we're certainly seeing it at auction this year. Much less quality inventory coming to auction as well. So what are we going to see in Q4 of 2021? Kind of the prediction. It's the crystal ball. I can't say we have all of the numbers or a model that tells you exactly where the market's going. But one thing we did do is we look at historical data and the supply and demand. We've reached out to a few accountants. So if you sit back and look at 2021, going into this year, we were able to, as farmers, we were able to buy inputs at a relatively low value to where they are today. We're able to forward contract. Maybe we all made some mistakes like myself and sold too much $12 soybeans and $4 corn versus your $7 corn and $16 beans. But even with some bad marketing this year, you're going to have some farm profitability. And in speaking with Iowa Farm Business Association, they think, or Paul thinks that this year is going to be a bubble for farm profitability, high commodity prices, low input prices. So there's a big net farm income prediction coming in 2021. And he is already seeing some pre-meetings scheduled where their incentive for the farmers to move out of a marginally higher tax bracket is going to be significant. What he's really talking about is farmers are sitting back looking at, they love bonus depreciation, they love equipment. This is the year to invest in that new machine. Going into Q4, Paul and his team are already starting to have meetings with our farmers to identify, okay, what our yields going to be? How much money did we actually make? And Paul thinks most of his farmers are going to make some machinery purchases to offset some of that income, primarily because they don't want to have to be in a higher tax bracket. So we, as TractorZoom team, formulating all the conversations we have in the market today, we sit back and say, there's not much supply. There's nothing in the market that's telling us supply is going to get better right now. And we only can see demand increasing going into Q4. So as that demand increases throughout December, we are predicting equipment prices are going to continue to rise because there's less availability. And most farmers are making quite a bit of money this year. So as we sit back and look at 2022, I don't know if anybody on here is farmers, but if you've priced inputs, it can be a different story. And we have $5 corn, not $6 corn like we had a few weeks ago or even a month ago. So as we sit back and look at the potential farm profitability for 2022, it's something that we think with tightening net farm income potentially in 2022, that this is something that we are going to be watching really closely and understand, will equipment prices continue to fall when January 1st rolls around the corner? One of the biggest things that we have the ability to do is sit back and look at how are our dealers able to understand what's going in the market and their demand for more real-time information. This is a quick chart over the last year and a half of dealers using our Iron Comps product and how many searches they're doing, basically their usage. As you can see, it's been growing significantly over the last year and a half. And what this tells us is dealers need auction information in real time to make better equipment pricing decisions, because the market's always changing. And most of the progressive dealers understand that auctions can drive the market. One of the ways to do this inside of our Iron Comps product is to simply look at the data. We've created a chart here over the last, here are 4 comparable sales, all for about a 500-hour 8320R. All 8 model, right about that 500-hour mark. And as you can see, It's kind of small, but in the bottom right-hand corner of each of those tractors, you can see the sold date. August of 2020, December of 2020, February of 21, and then June of 21. Very similar tractors, similarly equipped. As you can see, these prices are growing significantly. We told you earlier, row crop tractors can be up as much as 27%. Here you can clearly see why. This is kind of that evidence firsthand from a price transparency standpoint. Similarly, if we pick a select comparable sales for a 7230 Case IH combine, same thing. We're looking at year-over-year trends. September, December, June are the sold dates of all four of these combines. Similarly equipped, and yet you can see the price continue to elevate. Now, the one thing I do want to kind of stress here is a lot of our users are watching this. As we roll into 2022, will we continue to see these rise? How quickly do you as a dealer, used equipment manager, want information to make decisions internally? If it happens once, maybe it's an anomaly, but if it happens twice, you better be paying attention is kind of what we say. And if it's been going, if a trend continues for more than 2 up to 3 months, or you continue to see these going down, this is where we sit back and say, okay, as a dealer, used equipment manager, probably be adjusting where you want your numbers to come in at. Down at the Moving Iron Summit, I was speaking with one of our customers at Atlantic Tractor, used equipment manager, and one of his favorite things to do is use our equipment list on his most frequently traded models. This is not his list, to clarify. This is one that I've set up, but similar to how he keeps his. He has, in this example, 3 different make and model combinations and leverages our equipment list to give him more real-time information without him having to lift a finger. So what he'll do here is he'll take, for example, if you look at the top 2, both 2014 Deere 8320Rs, one with 1,500 hours and the other one with 3,000 hours. And you can sit back and look at what are auction values doing compared to my value. Maybe you have that in as the trade-in value, what the dollars you have in it, or what you're expecting to sell, whatever that value means to you. And then sit back and look at the difference. And uniquely what he's doing is he's coming in here every month and basically running a report. So he has traceability over the last year to identify which of these assets is growing, how do I need to adjust, even though he feels really comfortable with some of these assets or some of these pieces of equipment. This is how he can basically be hands-off and understand what the equipment market's doing from a comparable sales. Each of these you can dive in and see the comparable sales. Our software is automatically selecting. But this is just another data point for him to make really good decisions on the stuff that he trades all the time. So as we go into wrapping this up, just a few slides left. This is where we've sat back over the last 9 months and have really listened to auctioneers, bankers, farm credits, dealers, and understand where else can we provide value. And one of the biggest resounding opportunities that our company's had to serve equipment dealers and banks and farmers has really been to revamp our website to withstand more information coming through. So we sat back, retooled a lot of our Tractor Zoom technology, made it a hyper focus on mobile usage, as well as faster load speeds to be able to load equipment in rural areas much more quickly. And the driving force behind this is farmers want to use digital interactions on their cell phone. So as we sit back and learn about that, we've actually been able to benchmark our old website versus our new website at tractorzoom.com. And believe it or not, we're converting leads by updating technology and some user experience within our software. We're now being able to send leads to our auctioneers at 350% the rate we were on our old website. And in the last month, we've already shown about 1 million pieces of equipment throughout our Tractor Zoom website. So this sits back and says, investing in mobile opportunities to farmers is very much well worth it. And now that we're allowing dealers to advertise on TractorZoom and start sending leads, that you all can take advantage of that as well. So as we wrap it up, some of you may have seen our press release that came out through Farm and Equipment magazine last week, is the opportunity for equipment dealerships to promote their equipment to our farmers and shoppers on TractorZoom.com. And we just launched it last week, and over on the right-hand side, you can see some of the dealers that have already signed up. There's no fee today to sign up. And for John Deere dealers, it's less than a 2-minute project through an MF Pro integration, can quickly execute that. Other brands, it's a simple conversation, understanding how we can get inventory. But the primary reason we're doing this is to help the equipment industry really leverage mobile technology and mobile lead generation to your equipment and salespeople. If you have interest in getting your dealer's equipment on TractorZoom, you can simply go to the link at the bottom, TractorZoom.com/dealer/signup, or you can email me at my email address I'll show in the next slide. Another easy way to find it, go to TractorZoom.com. Up in the menu, you'll see dealer, and simply click sign up. And then we'll reach out and schedule the time to chat. So Cam and the rest of the farm equipment team, I want to say thank you for giving us the platform to speak to today. Again, I'm Kyle McMahon with TractorZoom and Iron Comps. My email is there on the bottom. Anybody wants a recording, feel free to reach out. And then Kim, I'd like to open up for Q&A if we have some questions.
All right, thank you, Kyle. So we don't have any questions yet, but I imagine some should be coming. There's a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, so just click on that if you want to submit some questions. And like Kyle said, we did record the session, so a recording will be sent out to everyone who's registered automatically. So keep an eye out for that. Any plans for a mobile app?
So we've had some discussions internally. It's something that we are looking towards, and whoever's asking the question, we'd love to have a conversation with you about what that means. I think we still need to identify where that opportunity exactly lies within the equipment dealer space. Okay, so whoever asked a question, if you would like to reach out and chat more on that, happy to elaborate and kind of discuss that some of the opportunities that we've seen and where we might be going.
All right, and then do you guys do any coverage of Canadian data as well?
Today, it is in the United States. We will likely be having a focus to larger geographies in the very near future.
Okay, and then do you keep track of how precision ag equipment adds to the value of equipment?
Yeah, so the unique opportunity inside of our software to really identify the value that can bring is, as you search for auction results inside of Iron Comps, you can start to look at what some of that precision, which those machines had precision equipment, whether it was OEM factory technology, or literally you want to go look at an older Kinsey planter and you want to look at precision planting equipment. Does it have firmers? Does it have 2020? What does that planter have? Because I think most people who've ever valued a planter, there seems to be no planter that's alike from one another. So yeah, you actually have that ability to search what that looks like inside of our software.
Are the updates that are being made to the data you guys have, is it, what's the frequency of that? Is it real time? How often is that information being updated?
Yeah, great question. So we're really big on data quality, and we've seen firsthand some pretty dirty information in the industry. So it is in real time. As soon as it's sold at auction, it goes to our quality assurance team to make sure that that is a sold value and not a no sale. Because naturally, if it didn't sell, that's not a real transaction. So we want to make sure we filter that out before we expose it inside the tool. But once it's confirmed by our team, it goes in the software for you to be able to use. So someday, most of the time it's the same day. Sometimes it could lack as much as a week, and it all depends on if there's a discrepancy. Trying to get a hold of the auction company. Sometimes it can take some time, and then to weed through that from a quality assurance standpoint to make sure it's good information.
All right, our next question. With higher input and equipment prices in 2022, will we see generally lower equipment sale prices by mid-2022? And then if so, how much of a reduction overall?
I think that's the $1 million question, right? I don't know what corn's going to do. I'm a farmer, and I don't know if I should be pre-selling what's going on in 2022 yet or not. That's many times it's commodity price driven. As we sit back and look at our input prices, most of them have gone up 20% plus cash rents going up. So it all depends on weather events happening throughout this winter and identifying what farm profitability looks like in 2022. And it's global demand. So it's really hard for us to sit back and say where it's going to go. But I think the common factors that we sit back and look at is really what's happening with supply. There's still going to be some strong demand, regardless of what happens the rest of this year going into next year. But it really falls down to those commodity prices and how farmers are feeling. I'd encourage you to watch the farmer or the Purdue farmer sentiment and use that as another data point to identify where you think machinery prices are going to go.
Okay, and then does your auction data cover the entire US?
It does. So we are partnered with just over 500 auction companies from across the United States. And today we are advertising on TractorZoom over 75% of all farm equipment sold at auction. So if you're a user of Iron Comps, you have the advantage of looking at 75% of all farm machinery that's sold at auction, and that data is right at your fingertips.
Any other questions from anyone? All right. Well, if there are, oh, here comes one. Do you have plans to cover that other 25% soon?
Yeah, so we have an auction success team, which manages all the relationships with the auction companies. The thing about us is we're not just scraping the internet, pulling in all this information. We have direct relationships with these auction companies, which allows us to have that relationship to quality assure and have good, clean data. So as we continue pushing forward, today we're at that opportunity of being in a high market share. And yes, we're always continuing to partner with more auction companies to grow that. And now the other opportunity is looking at helping out some dealers from a marketing standpoint and the potential of leveraging retail information inside of our Iron Comps product in the near future.
Okay, I think that covers all the questions that have come through. So we will wrap things up. Thanks, Kyle, for sharing the data you guys have. It's very informative. And like I said earlier, that we recorded the presentation, so it'll be available on the Farm Equipment website for anyone who wants to go back and review it or have anyone else at your dealership watch it. Watch your email and the Farm Equipment newsletter for more information on when that's available. On behalf of Kyle, the TractorZoom and Iron Comps teams, as well as the entire Farm Equipment staff, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. When you leave the webinar, you'll be directed to a short survey. Please let us know what you thought of the event and if there's any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, Kim.
Yep, of course, always a pleasure.